Angle Z is by far the smallest, 37, and then angle X after that, and then angle Y is the largest, it's last. So now looking at the segments. Since Z is the smallest angle, the side opposite that is going to be the smallest side. So that would be segment, with the bar above, X, Y. The one that's in the middle is going to be opposite the angle that's 45 degrees, which is X. So that segment that's opposite that would be segment Y, Z. Notice I have the bar above the two capital letters. Then the largest side would be opposite angle Y, segment X, Z. So these two type of questions will be on the quiz next class. Very simple. Smallest side is opposite the smallest angle. Now flip to page 98. Please flip to page 98. On page 98, you are assigned 13 through 17. Whoops, I'm changing that. 13 to 17. I need you to do number 17. Number 17, I need you to do that one. Okay, so I'm going to look at number 13 and 14, and then I'm going to look at number 19 and 20, because these are two more types of questions that are going to be on your quiz next class. For number 13, the instructions read, is it possible to construct a triangle with the given side lengths? Yes or no? And then if not, explain why. So if not, you need to tell me, well, what failed? Why not? What's going to happen if you try to put those segments together? So number 13, 3, 4, and 5. The rule that we're using for these type of problems is when you sum up any two sides, it's got to be greater than the third. That was the very first notes that you wrote down today. Was that when you add up any two sides, it's got to be greater than the third. So you need to check three things. When I add 3 plus 4, how does that compare to 5? Then you need to compare, well, what about when I add 3 plus 5? How is that going to compare to 4? And then the last scenario is, well, what if I add 4 and 5? How does that compare to 3? You need all of these to be greater than, because the theorem says when you add up any two side lengths, it must be greater than the third, than that one remaining. So if you find out that one of these is less than, it's not going to make a triangle. Okay? So this is 7, and yes, that's greater than 5. So fantastic, that one works. This is 8, and yes, that's greater than 4. Fantastic. And this is 9. Yes, that's greater than 3. Fantastic. All three check out? Yes. You will have a triangle if you have 3 segment lengths of 3, 4, and 5. And it's actually going to create a right triangle. Just a fun fact for you. Number 14. Same exact thing. You need to test these 3 scenarios. When you add up any two sides, it's got to be greater than the third. So looking at the first situation, you have 6 plus 4. How does that compare to 1? And then you have 6 plus 1. And how does that compare to 4? And then you have, I probably should put more room in between those, huh? There you go. And then the last one, you've got plus 4. How does that compare to 6? So you need to check all 3 scenarios, because when you add up two side lengths, it's got to be greater than the third. So this is 10, and yes, that's much larger than 1. This is 7, and yes, that's much larger than 4. However, 5, that is less than 6. So that one checked out, but no, this one fails. The instructions say, is it possible to construct a triangle with the given side lengths? This was absolutely yes. This one was no. Then it says, if not, then explain why not. This is your mathematics as an explanation, and you need to write and tell me. So here, sorry. sum of two sides is less than the third. Therefore, no triangle. Because if 6 was our base, if that segment, that was 6 units or whatever, inches, yards, whatever, if that was 6 units, let's say in blue ink was 4, and then red in 1, those 3 segments would never come together and form a triangle. There would be this massive gap in between the 2 shorter lengths. That's no way those can create triangles. So this is where it fails. So no triangles formed for number 14. These are 2 types of questions that will be on your quiz. The next one, we're going to look down to the next section. We're going to look at number 19 together. And look at number 19 together. Number 19 says, describe the possible lengths of the third side of the triangle given given lengths of the other 2 sides. Okay? It is. Sweet. Okay, so number 19. They give us 2 of the triangle side lengths. We need to determine what are the possible lengths of that third side. Well, it has to pass those 3 inequalities, those 3 tests, that when you add up any 2 sides, it's got to be greater than the third. Okay? This is not a guess and check game. This also isn't you listing off a bunch of side lengths that it could be. This is not listing, you're not guessing and checking. This is you using mathematics to tell me exactly what the possible lengths are. We're only given 2 side lengths, so is everyone comfortable? We just say x is the third side. Are we cool with that? Okay, so we have 1, 2, and then some value, x, that is our third side. And if I were you, I'd go ahead and write x is third side's length. Well, now we're just going to treat this problem, number 19, exactly like the one above. You've got 3 scenarios you need to test out. Whenever you add any 2 sides, it's got to be greater than the third. So one scenario is going to be, when you add 6 and 9, that's got to be greater than x. Sorry, x. These are my 3 side lengths. When you add up any 2, it's got to be greater than the third. That's one scenario. Well, when I add up 6 and x, that's got to be greater than 9. That's the second scenario. And then my last scenario is, well, when I add x and 9, that's got to be greater than 6. So all I've done is treated this problem exactly like the ones above. The only difference is, rather than giving all 3, they just give us 2 and one of the sides is a variable. That's fine. We're going to treat it the same way. So here's my 3 things that must pass. We need to solve these. What is 6 plus 9?
15.
Okay. So 15 is greater than x. I want x to be on the left-hand side of this inequality so that when we read it, it says x is less than or equal to or greater than or whatever, just something. When you switch an inequality, everything has to switch. Which value is the symbol opening up to right now?
15.
Okay, 15. So when you switched it, it's got to stay that way. So I'm going to put x on the left and 15 on the right. Well, the inequality needs to stay opening up to 15, so that's why it's going to switch as well. So this is one thing I know about this third side that we don't know what its actual length is. In order to create a triangle, it's got to be less than 15. Because if it was 15 units long, then these other two segments would just fall flat right on top of it. Correct? And if it was longer than 15, like say 20, well then 20 would be a huge segment, and these other two would just not even meet. It would be really far apart. So we know that it has to be less than 15. Let's look at this scenario. Okay, an inequality, it's very similar to an equal sign. So we're just going to solve this. I need to get x by itself. So what do I have to do on both sides of this inequality? Subtract 6. I'm going to do minus 6, minus 6. I've got x is greater than 3. So this gives me another insight into the value that this third side can be. X, yes, it's got to be less than 15, but it can't be 1 unit long. Because if it was 1 unit long, then 9 inches, that segment would be here, and then 6 and 1, those would never touch. So you can't just stop here and say, oh, as long as it's less than 15, you're good. No. 1 unit wouldn't work, a 1 inch wouldn't work. So that's why we got to keep going and testing all of these. So it tells me, well, x has got to be greater than 3. Now, let's do the green one. I'm going to subtract 9 from both sides to get x completely by itself. X has got to be greater than negative 3. Well, we already knew this. How did we already know that this value x has to be greater than negative 3? Before we did this, when we started this problem and we were looking for x, why did we know it had to be greater than negative 3? Yeah, it's x is third side's length. Can you have a negative 2 as a side's length? No. So we knew this already going into the problem. We knew that these lengths had to be greater than 0. Because you can't have a side length that's 0, and you can't have a side length that's negative. So we don't need this, but it's good to know. But we already knew that going into it. This is the interval. It's got to be bigger than 3 and less than 15. This is your answer on the quiz. It's not some guessing game where you're telling me, well, 12 would work, 10 would work, 9 would work. No. You're telling me exactly the intervals. It's going to be less than 15, but greater than 3. That's how you do these right here. And those type of questions will be on the quiz next class. Go to page 100. Remember that page 100? On 100, this is all about the hinge theorem. So if you wanted to write that up on top, that'd be probably a pretty wise idea. The hinge theorem is very easy. The bigger the angle, the bigger that opposite side. So, this segment, we have these two triangles, and these two triangles have this one segment that is congruent to another, and then they have this second segment that's congruent to one another, and then we're looking at the included angle, the angle that's being created by these segments. Well, that angle is going to affect this third side that's in green ink. It's going to affect its length. The bigger the angle, what's going to happen to that third side? The bigger that third side is going to be the opposite side. So they want us to compare. Notice there's no bar above it. How do you read this?
The length of ST.
The length of segment ST. So you're comparing the length of segment ST and the length of segment VW. And that's exactly what we did in our notes already. I had you compare the length of two segments. Okay? So you're going to fill that with either less than, greater than, or equal to. So what's it going to be? What are you going to place in there? The length of segment ST is what compared to the length of segment VW? Greater than, because 54 is greater than 52. So 54 is going to be opened up wider, therefore the opposite side is going to be longer to accommodate for that. So your answer for here would be greater than. Pretty simple. Pretty simple.